I try to put a lot of value on the quality of the relationships versus the quantity. I feel like a lot of multifamily investors are just trying to get the biggest reach ever, which, my reach is growing, but I really want it to be authentic.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am your host, as always, on this journey I like to call a podcast, Joni Weiss. And with me today, I have a wonderful guest, as always, Josi Heron. How are you doing today?
Joni, I am great. And I am so glad to be here. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I am appreciative that you took the time out of your busy day to join. And when I say busy day, I mean, you're busy buying real estate. I mean, that's what you do, right?
It is all over the place. Yes.
All over the place.
All day long.
Truthfully, I mean, when you say all over the place, I mean, how many states are you in right now currently?
Well, I shouldn't say all of the states. Okay. I'm very much focused on the Midwest, very much in Kansas and Missouri. Also have a little bit of a squirrel in California, which has been an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, when you say all over, it's all relative, but Missouri and Kansas are big states, and there's a lot that you've been doing out there and continue to do so, which one of the things I love about this podcast, we get to talk to so many people who have many different perspectives, many different backgrounds, which I think is amazing because everyone comes into real estate from a totally different angle. But I think the common denominator, which most of our guests have in common, is that they get into real estate for something more, meaning whether it's after a career in doing something else and just moving in because they want more freedom, more opportunities, or, people have businesses and they get into real estate because it's a way to grow wealth. It's a way, to have the tax benefits there that are involved there. What would you say? And before, maybe give a little background on what you've come into, but what was kind of your angle in transitioning more full-time into real estate?
Yeah, it started with the tax benefits and looking for a better tax strategy for my husband and myself. But on that process, I would say I found out about multifamily real estate, and it was a complete light going off. Like, this is what I want to do. It took me a little while to figure out how to get into multifamily, but started with me looking for, some tax strategies, and then became a way for me to transition from my then corporate job to do this full time.
That's awesome. And your corporate job, I mean, you were also in the Coast Guard, right? Yeah. So that's my part-time job. And then I had a full-time, career as a consultant in an engineering firm. Awesome. So when I say part-time, I mean that you just like went out fun, you're in the reserves, like what does that mean?
Yeah. And actually there's a little tangent there as well. I went to the Coast Guard Academy. I was full-time every day in the Coast Guard, and then wanted to move to Colorado and a couple other things. And so I shifted to the reserves, which just means typically it's one weekend a month. I'll go to my reserve unit and augment, and then do some training in between. But the fun tangent is I actually just got orders. So for the next 3 months, I'm going to be full-time in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to be helping settle the Afghanistan families, which is amazing, but it's really a little bit of a shift for my life, which is in Colorado. So,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, not just physically, but also, you've been working full-time after you left your corporate job. You've been working full-time in real estate and the multifamily deals. So that's probably going to put a little bit of a challenge on you as well.
Yeah, it's going to make me a lot more efficient in my business. And I've got an assistant who is absolutely stepping up, but it'll be a test.
That certainly will. Probably obviously a good test, because if you can manage that will just show you how, really, I don't need to be doing all of these tasks. I can hand them off, and that will hopefully be a catalyst just to help spur the growth, the continued growth of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. It has taken me a little while to get there and shift my mindset with knowing, I'm leaving in a week and a half, but knowing that into how can I make this an opportunity? And I think that's exactly it. Like I've been streamlining my business the last couple of weeks and really getting out of the busy work. And so it's that part's been pretty cool.
That's crazy. What are one of those things that you're excited about passing along to someone else?
There's pieces of the asset management that I love to dive really deep into spreadsheets and track all of the numbers and expenses as things come in. And I have bookkeepers. I don't need to do that. But that's something I recognize I need to let go of. And so my assistant is going to be monitoring kind of at the same level that I did. And then eventually we'll step away completely and let the bookkeepers do their job.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to monitor that, but a lot of that stuff, like you said, can be not just done by an assistant, but nowadays can be done, automated, right? You can see a lot of that tracking automated. So I guess it's about building the systems or building the software, whatever it is.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I recognize that as well. I used to work with programmers on an engineering function for tracking KPIs and metrics and all these things. And I know there's so much opportunity there from a technology standpoint to really integrate that into business. It's just a matter of getting there. So,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, listen, that's what we're here for, right? We're here to kind of learn as we go and hopefully get better at it as time comes. But like you said, when opportunity comes and you're kind of forced into this scenario, in a situation where you have to be full-time in the Coast Guard, obviously that's going to be a challenge that will come with great benefits on the other side.
Yep. And it's only 3 months and I can help people in the meantime. So it's all perspective, right? Exactly.
No, I mean, it does sound like a challenging, just from the perspective of what you're actually going to be doing out there in Washington. Yeah. I mean, that's a very challenging position to be in.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome.
Which is also why I've been flooding your inbox lately with all of the cost segregation studies we need to get done now.
Now I understand. When you're like, my schedule is going to be changing in November. I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. Yeah. So now I get it. Now I know why your schedule is going to be changing. And you need to get stuff streamlined right now. It totally makes sense now. That's amazing. Through this career shift that you've done, has it been done as part of, I'm just curious, like any type of mentorship programs or masterminds, things like that? Because I know a lot of people are able to make that shift with the help of peers and others doing the same thing. Is that something you also participated in?
Yeah, and I think I undervalued that in the beginning, but I'm part of 2 different networks and masterminds. And then I actually have started more intimate, smaller scale 2 masterminds as well that I lead. And it's huge having the sounding board, seeing people trying to figure out, the same type of challenges it becomes your community and your family and also pushes you, to keep on stepping up and trying to get out of your box.
Right. You have people that are there that are accountable for you and you for them. It does make, I've seen, tremendous success in doing things like that as well. So that's awesome. So what are the 2 communities that you mentioned that you created or started? Both of them are ongoing separately?
Yeah, separately. So one is for, professional women professional women who are investors, want to be investors, are somewhere in that spectrum. Because I went to a conference at one point and a low light bulb went off again. And I have always worked in industries that are typically higher percentage male, and that's never stopped me. But what I realized is so often the women don't speak up or we don't connect. And so after this conference, I, connected with a couple of ladies and we started a group, and it's been almost a year and a half now. We've got probably 25 to 30 members on the roster. We get a consistent 10 or 12, that meet every other week. And at this point, we're friends. We're helping each other. There's been people who've partnered together, and shared resources. So that one is super exciting. And then the other, as you mentioned, I've got the Coast Guard background. I started a network for military multifamily investors. I call it multifamily.mil. And same thing, it's for military members who maybe already are investing in real estate, but they want to jump into multifamily. And it's been amazing sounding board. Same kind of scale, not huge. I know I could grow both of these more if I wanted to, but I really think we get a lot out of, kind of the core group there.
For sure.
And they've been super rewarding.
For sure. I mean, I love that they're really kind of two separate tracks, right? Meaning two separate kind of, even though there may be some overlap, obviously you overlap in both of them, and there may be some others that overlap, right? But I love the fact that you kind of took your, what you specialize in or what your experience, your life experience has been, and then kind of shape the mastermind to attract others who have those exact similar things. I mean, I see a lot of times, a lot of these masterminds are very, very general, very broad spanning, and, it can reach out to, hundreds or thousands of people, perhaps, any others are very limited, but nevertheless, when you are focused on finding like a demographic and finding a group that you already have a lot in common, besides for just real estate investing, everyone who comes to any mastermind is going to have that in common if the mastermind is about real estate investing. But if you can already align yourself with these people from life experiences, that's really smart. I mean, I love that angle because I haven't seen too many other groups like that have kind of taken that form. Mm-hmm. Obviously there are other women mastermind groups, that's for sure. There are other, military masterminds, but, when you kind of take it and hone it into what you're doing, right? I think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's been super rewarding. And I try to put a lot of value on the quality of the relationships versus the quantity. I feel like a lot of multifamily investors are just trying to get the biggest reach ever, which, my reach is growing, but I really want it to be authentic.
Yeah. And on those, on that kind of note, on that regard, I mean, you kind of set yourself apart from a lot of those multifamily syndicators out there, specifically because you're focused on smaller properties in general, right? I mean, not that you wouldn't necessarily go after, those big fish or whatever you want to call it. Like Jerome, my friend, likes to call it, the Moby Dick, right? Going after the big whale, go after the little, don't go after the big fish. Just go after the little fish. And obviously a 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 unit building is not little by any means, but it's a different market. And I think there's probably less competition there, and you're able to kind of add value in a much different way than you would on some of those larger properties.
Yeah. And that was not by intention. I think the plan was to kind of step up, the unit number. But what I found with my partners is we are really good at the 40 to 80 unit range. And we're really good at value add. Like we've got a very strong property management, component. Property manager is one of the partners. We've got a very strong construction component and a lot of experience between, one of my partners and myself in project management and that type of thing. And so we kind of found this niche that just is working, and we've got great relationships with brokers. And so the competition is picking up. It is tricky, but we are still getting deals, off market because we have a reputation now for being able to close and execute our plan on these other properties, on these value add properties.
That's awesome. It really comes down to the mechanics and the fact that you have, through experience, figured out what those mechanics are, right? And how to implement them. And like you said, you do a lot of tracking and seeing how those things are working out. It's all in the numbers, right? You figure out very quickly that you can just replicate that, right? Repeat and, rinse, repeat, whatever you want to call it. You just do the same thing, a similar type property. Obviously, finding those deals is one of the challenges. So how do you go about doing that? Like, what's your focus in terms of the actual acquisitions or finding the deals, or is that something one of your partners focuses on?
No, good question. And I think a lot of groups have very defined roles. Like I am acquisitions, I am asset management. And the way our partnership is kind of formed is I have done a lot of the different roles. And part of that is also finding strengths. I have a partner who is very focused on acquisitions, but we've actually taken turns where he will lead a property acquisition, and then the next one I will, and it has worked out pretty well. So I would say and I also toe the line of capital raising. I have the platform, I have the CRM and the network and those type of things. So right now, maybe because we are in those smaller properties, we don't need to delineate quite so much, but we do work really well as a partnership and tag teaming the different responsibilities. So.
Okay, that's cool. And I mean, are you finding any specific angle where you're finding property? Is it through brokers? Are you getting off-market deals? Where's the majority of your deals actually coming from?
Yeah, from brokers. And I've had one, I'm actually closing this week on a property direct from seller. I know the seller. We bought another property with her, and I'm closing that this in a week, actually a week from today. But mostly it's broker relationships and not, once again, is really niched. And maybe that's my theme here is you niche down, but not a ton. We've got a couple loyal, strong relationships with some very active brokers, and they will move things towards us, on a regular basis.
That's awesome. I mean, it really, if you can find value in one thing, right? That's what I say. Just keep doing that, right? Keep going back. One thing I actually heard recently on a podcast, I think it was from Tim Kelly, who's also a former Navy officer, former military veteran, or not former military veteran, but I heard him on a podcast recently, and he was talking about one thing that he always does anytime he gets a property under contract or finds a new deal, he'll always ask the seller, do you have any other properties? Right? Because maybe they had something else that they were thinking about, okay, let me get through this transaction and then I'll put the other one on the market, when I'm done with that. And the seller from their mindset may not even think about, okay, let's just, do everything. Because for them, it might be too much to handle, right? Especially when you're talking about mom and pop owners or people who are kind of older and wanting to sell for various reasons. They may not want to be putting everything out there all at once, but you can get something totally off market or get something with the same seller who is, for all intents and purposes, if you enjoyed working with them one time, you'd probably do it again. So he's won a number of deals specifically just through that, just like asking the seller, oh, do you happen to have any other properties that you, maybe not even that you're looking to sell, but if you ask the question, they might give it some thought and then, potentially sell them. So there you go.
I love it. I'll have to do that for sure. That's a great tip.
Yeah, that's the advantage of listening to podcasts. You learn and pick up all this stuff.
Yeah, I listen constantly. You get a whole like master's degree in real estate, listening to podcasts and networking. Totally. Which was one of the reasons why I kind of went into real estate, because I realized here's something I can do. I don't have to have any, formal education to go in here, right? And start. One reason is because you can learn a lot just from being apprenticing, just working with other people who are doing it, but also the masterminds and the podcast, the information that's out there available, whether it's Bigger Pockets or just these Facebook groups that are incredible, so much value and knowledge going around from other people and their experiences. So I love any for our listeners, obviously the listeners to this podcast are partial to Weiss advice, but are there any other podcasts that you really like for you or you can't go without? Yeah, I listened to Joe Fairless. I really like Whitney Sewell. I was on his podcast. I connect with him a little bit because, once again, same common background. Right. And I do listen to a couple others. I actually, been nerding out on a tax and legal podcast lately because I'm still trying to figure out my strategies.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, I love listening to Adventures in Real Estate with Susie and Michael, so it's neat when you start to see people in your close circles take off in the podcast world. And I love the discussions that they have as well. Yeah,
that's awesome. No, those are all amazing podcasts. I highly recommend them to anyone who's looking out, our listeners who are looking for other podcasts to check out. Go check those out. And I'm curious, what's the tax and legal one? Because I love the real estate CPA with Brandon Hall and Thomas Castelli. I don't know if that's the one you're referring to, but
no, I need to listen to them. No, it's through the law office that I started working with, which is KKOS, Mark Kohler.
Oh, yes.
And I'm listening to a couple years ago. I don't know how I came upon 2016 podcasts. Got a lot of catching up to do. I don't know if he's still putting a podcast on.
Yeah, he's got a tremendous amount of content out there also. That's awesome. Awesome. Well, let's move right into the final four. These are 4 questions I like to ask all my guests. And the first question for you, Josi, is going to be, what's the worst job that you ever had?
Okay, so this image flashes in my mind when you say this. And it was maybe the whole job was not bad, but there's this moment when I had graduated Coast Guard Academy and I was an engineer. I had a choice to be an engineering officer on a ship or to be a deck officer. And I chose engineering for many different reasons. But there's a moment when you're brand new. And so they're kind of trying to break you in with all of the knowledge. So I'm in my coveralls. We're on a ship I'm in the engine room between two huge main diesel engines. We're off the coast of Mexico. It's 120 degrees. I'm oily, I'm sweaty. And I just was like, what am I doing? Like, I just had this moment where I'm like, what am I doing? And I was wiping oil is what I was doing and checking the machinery. And it was so many lessons learned, and it was hard work. So many lessons learned, but I just remember thinking, this is a step in my process. Like, I am doing the hard work now because there's people who are going to do that job forever. I was doing that job so I could appreciate that. But it was the 120 degrees. I just graduated college. Everybody else is partying and I'm wiping oil. And I was just, that was not fun.
Yeah, I guess that
not my thing.
You learned pretty quickly where you wanted to be and what role you wanted to play.
Right. Yeah. It was a good lesson, but yeah.
Can't imagine. All right. Well, second question, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Sure. So I would say the first one that really appealed to me early on, I think I was in my teens, was A Millionaire Next Door. And I don't hear people mention that very often because it's pretty old. Not that I'm that old, but the book. And I just remember being young and reading it and then realizing it was the analogy that, the school teacher next door who is smart with their money is probably better off than the guy with the flashy car. Like, that lesson, ingrained some pretty strong, savings and frugality kind of efforts on my part for years. And then later, of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And now I'm reading a lot of mindset books. So I'm trying to up my game a little bit. I like the Hal Elrod, Miracle Morning, and a couple others. Yeah,
those are all great. I mean, the truth is I haven't read the Millionaire Next Door, although I've heard of it. And a couple of other people have mentioned it on this podcast. And I think it's one of those things that I think maybe I just, maybe I already know
that part.
Yeah, I skipped that part. Maybe I knew the lessons from it and I just didn't come across it, but it's definitely on the book list. And the great thing about this podcast is that we have this ongoing book list. So I will never, ever run out of something to read. That's for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. I have a whole stack right here. I'm halfway through a lot of books.
Well, the third question, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool to be fluent in a couple languages. I took high school Spanish, and if I'm around it for a little bit, I can kind of pick it up, but never really, I love connecting with people. I love travel. And I think, Spanish and French are high on my list.
Right. You might need Afghan coming up.
I know. Yeah. I'll see what I can pick up.
Right. But yeah, Spanish, is huge, especially, if you're dealing with workforce housing, anywhere in the country, you're certainly going to come across tenants that speak Spanish. So that's a great skill. And I think a lot of people have used that as one of the skills people want to pick up simply because it's so practical. I myself speak a few languages, and it's incredible the way it opens up your mind to just understanding culture in different ways, as well as, just working your brain in a totally different way. It's awesome. But you gotta immerse yourself. That's really the only way. That's really the only way to do it. Just immerse yourself. So go travel to South America for,
Okay, I think I will. Yeah, okay, after DC. Yeah. And I love the appreciation when I'm stumbling through trying to say something in Spanish, and most of the time everybody's gracious and they're like, she's trying. But I love they can appreciate that I'm trying to connect, and I think there's a lot of room for improvement.
That's true. No, that is true. It really does depend on the culture, but certain people will give you the patience, and others will just try to answer you back in English in their broken English.
They're like, don't even try. Yeah.
So fourth and final question, what does success mean to you?
Yeah, good question. So I think I may differ, from answers that other people have. And a lot of times it's focused on a number, or wealth or that type of thing. I think that success is when I'm in a place that I can shift from focusing on business to focusing on significance. And I've had a life of service, but I've also crossed, crossed the line or walked both lanes between, service to the country and, there's some nonprofits I'm involved in, but I also really like the business world. But I think success is when I can shift, and really focus on giving back. And that can be through a lot of different organizations.
Are there any specifics that you that you like to give back towards or you want to share?
Yeah, of course, anything veteran. So there's a tiny home project that's kicking off here in Colorado that for homeless vets and kind of houses and supports them. And I'm also involved with another nonprofit that helps underprivileged kids get to college, but also supports them through the whole journey, almost like sponsor family style. And that's pretty powerful. So I think those areas in general. And then there's some that feed the poor. So I think, I don't know, I could see myself in a couple of years doing a lot with a couple different nonprofits.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, those are great opportunities, great programs, great. And we've had a couple other people, veterans, speak about the tiny homes, because those are things that, you're talking about real help. I mean, shelter housing is such a huge issue, especially for many, many veterans have find themselves in challenges for various reasons. It's awesome that you guys are coming out and people are helping support that. So thank you for your time and for spending this episode with us today. How can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
Yeah, the easiest way is to look me up on LinkedIn, Josephine Heron, Heron. And then my company is Waypoints Equity with an S, because there's lots of different waypoints that we all go through. So you can visit my website at waypointsequity.com. And on there, you can sign up for my newsletter or jump on a meeting with me. I love to connect with people at any point on their journey, whether you're just kind of curious about what I'm doing, whether you want to do what I'm doing, or, potentially invest passively with some of our deals. All of it is really... That's my favorite part, is connecting.
Okay. Well, we will certainly put those links in the show notes for our listeners to reach out to you. And I appreciate your time, and we'll hopefully get a chance to speak again soon and make the best out of your trip to Washington.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jonah. It's been an honor to be on your podcast.
My pleasure. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us once again. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.